Hi, welcome to the overview for the options handout part 1. Okay, so on this handout, we're going to look at the buying of a call option and then closing of a call option. So we're going to open and we're going to buy a call option, and then we're going to close it to see how we did profit or loss wise. So for the first thing we need to do is calculate intrinsic value. So remember, you need to read over the textbook chapter 14 before you work on this handout to really understand what you're doing. So in the first part here, intrinsic value of a call, stock price minus strike price times 100, or 0, whichever is greater. Meaning that if you calculate this and it's a negative number, the answer will be 0. So here we're going to do stock price minus strike price times 100. So let's go over here and stock price minus strike price times 100, and remember we need to put this in first part in parentheses. So we get a negative 100, which means that it is a 0 because it can't be negative. So time value is going to be, we're going to take the call premium times 100 minus the intrinsic value, which is B7. So 125. So the time value is any value the premium has above the intrinsic value. So the intrinsic value is 0, so the call premium is all time value. So together, intrinsic value plus time value equals the call premium. So the total cost of this contract, you add the intrinsic value to the time value, and you get the total cost. Okay, so that would be on the opening. We're buying a contract, and it's costing us $125. Remember, one contract equals 100 shares. That's why I'm multiplying some of these formulas by 100 to represent that one contract is 100 shares. Now, a hint, down here, there'll be two contracts, so you'll need to multiply it by 200 shares. Okay, now let's go to the close. On the close, let's figure out what the intrinsic value is. It's the same formula. Stock price minus strike price times 100. So let's put in the okay. So intrinsic value is $400. So it makes sense. Stock price is 40. Strike price is 36. As you remember from reading the textbook, strike price is what I can purchase it at. So if I can purchase it at 36 and stock is trading at 40, there's a $4 per share profit, and the intrinsic value is really the profit value of the option. Now, time value is going to be intrinsic value. Is going to be the call premium, and I'm going to multiply this by 100, minus the intrinsic value. So that means the time value is 25. Together, the intrinsic value plus the time value has to equal the call premium. These two elements, intrinsic value, time value, are what makes up the call premium. Okay. So now, profit or loss in the trade, if I was to trade the contract, I want to calculate the profit or loss. So if I trade a contract, that means I'm going to be selling it at the call premium. So I'm going to sell it at the call premium times 100 shares. And I have to subtract the cost of the contract that we calculated up here. And this becomes my trading value on the contract. Now I may want to execute, which means I'm not trading the contract. I'm going to be actually buying the stock. So what that would mean if I'm going to be buying the stock at my strike price and then selling it at the stock price for my profit. So to calculate the execute, I'm going to start with my stock price. Okay. So stock price, and I'm going to minus the strike price, because this is my profit, and let's multiply that by 100. So this is just the formula to multiply that by 100. But I have to also subtract my costs. So I'm going to modify this, and it puts another parentheses around this, and I'm going to say minus my cost. So my execute means what I'm basically doing here is I'm selling the stock. I'm going to purchase the stock at 36. That's my strike price. I'm going to sell it at 40. I'm going to make $400. Once I subtract out the cost of buying the option, I get my profit for executing. And you'll see that executing is less than the trading. That's why most people will trade their contracts, not execute them. Now, I can also let the contract expire. So just like if you had milk, you paid $3 for a gallon of milk, you didn't touch it, the gallon of milk expired, how much money did you lose? You lost what you paid for the milk. So if I'm going to let the contract expire, then I'm going to lose, my loss is going to be whatever I paid for the contract. So I paid for the contract, and I'm going to multiply this by -1 to show a loss. So I paid $125 for the contract, so that's going to be my loss. Okay, so that is the first example on buying a call contract and closing a call contract. There's a second example down here that you're going to do by yourself in the handout. And remember, this example has 2 contracts, so you're going to be multiplying everything by 200 instead of 100. Okay, now let's go to the second example on this handout. And this example involves buying a put option. So we're going to open the contract by buying a put option. So we're going to first calculate the intrinsic value. But now this formula is different because a put is an inverse of a call. It's stimulating a short sell. So I'm going to go back to the textbook, and as you should be doing if you're reading the textbook, there's now a second formula for the intrinsic value of a put. Strike price minus stock price. And you see how that's different before over here. The intrinsic value of a call was stock price minus strike price. But on the put, it's the inverse. It's strike price minus stock price. So you could see that strike for the call, and then the put is strike stock because it's the inverse. So we're reversing that, and we're still multiplying by the number of stock shares, which is 100. Now, again, it can't be less than 0. So if you get a negative number, you have to change it to 0. So let's go back to the handout. And so strike minus stock price, strike minus stock price, and I'm going to multiply this by 100 since it represents 100 contracts. Okay, so the intrinsic value is 100. Now the time value is going to be the put premium. So the put premium, and I'm going to multiply this by 100, minus the intrinsic value. So the put premium is 45. So together, 145 equal the 145 put premium. So the total cost is going to be sorry, I'm having trouble with this formula. Plus this, plus, there we go. 145 is the total cost for buying a put contract. Now let's look at the close. Now if we close the contract again, and we see that the stock price has gone up. So when we go here, strike price minus stock price, we get a negative. So we have to actually put in a 0 because intrinsic value is 0. So time value. The time value is going to be, put premium minus intrinsic value. So quite simply, it's $5 is the time value. So put premium times 100 shares is $5, and since there's no intrinsic value, the time value is $5, which makes sense because this is what we'd call out of the money. Because if you have the right to sell it short at 36, buying it back at 40 would be a loss. So let's see what happens if we trade the option contract. So if we trade the option contract, we are going to earn the put premium times 100 minus the cost. So we actually will lose $140 on the trade. Now if we execute, we're basically saying that we're going to execute the stock. So what I'm saying is I could sell at $36 is what I could sell short at. Okay, now I'm going to have to repurchase at 40 times 100. And this would be a minus. And I also have to pay for the cost of the contract. So here the loss is 545. Okay, now if I let the contract expire, again, when you let the contract expire, you're losing the cost of that contract. So I'm just going to take the cost minus -1, so it's a negative. So of these three situations, which is the best? Probably trading it, because you lose the least. You're going to lose 140 versus 145. Now again, if this is confusing you, if you're having a hard time grasping these concepts of the spreadsheet, it might mean that you haven't read over the chapter thoroughly. So please read over that chapter. And then again, the second example below this will be 2 contracts. So you would use 200 multiplied by 200, not 100 shares on the formulas. Okay, so that's a quick overview of how to complete this options handout part 1. And again, options are confusing and a difficult topic in investments, and that's why you really do need to read over the chapter if you feel like you're having difficulty completing these spreadsheets or understanding the concepts of these spreadsheets. Okay, thank you, and good luck with the rest of the spreadsheet. Goodbye.